From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Well, everyone, good morning. Happy Tuesday, January 18th, 2022. We are here with the latest of what's happening in the world of information security, cybersecurity, and so much more for practitioners and beyond, because we are starting to see the drips of the first cyber war in actual use in battlefield prior to an invasion. Just saying, it's happening. We're watching it. The industry that we all work in, the one that puts food on our table, a roof over our heads, that provides for our families, that same process is now being used in cyber warfare. We're going to talk about that at the end of the show today because we've got a lot going on for practitioners, so don't go anywhere. If you have not checked out the new CyberHub Podcast website, please go to cyberhubpodcast.com. Check it out. Get all of your favorite content right there. You can watch any episode you want of any of our podcasts, from Goodbye Privacy to CISO Talk to Breaking into Cybersecurity with Renee Small and Chris Fallon. You guys can check that out all on our website. If you want to be a guest on one of the shows, you can also apply it right there. If you want to sponsor an episode, you could do that too. And you can find out a whole lot more, including our swag store coming soon, our members area, and exclusive content in our members area that's coming very, very soon. So we'll get to that. Shout out to KnowBe4 for their support of today's show. Without their support, the show would not be possible. Let's get to some shout outs. Scott Merrifield, good morning to you. Good sir. Thank you for being here. David, good morning. Good morning from the frozen tundra. Whew. Just saying that gives me chills. Good morning to Mr. McQuiggan, and good morning to Stephen Martin. How are you doing this lovely Tuesday morning? I hope everyone had a very good Dr. King Day. You reminisced a little bit about his legacy, his preaching, his so much more. We played the entire I Have a Dream episode on the show yesterday. The entire I Have a Dream speech, on the show yesterday. Go and check it out. You definitely don't want to miss it. It was probably the best almost 7 minutes in the show so far this year. I really enjoyed it. All right, folks. Before we do that, though, let's get into today's news. But before, my double espresso. I don't know what you're drinking this morning. This is my Ellie Extra Bold Roast double espresso that I absolutely enjoy. And all my coffee recommendations will be on the new website, so you won't want to miss it. Folks, that's it. Here we go. Coffee cup cheers. All right, let's get into today's show. Oracle is going to keep us busy for quite some time. In preparing for their January 2022 patch lineup, Oracle has issued a pre-release announcement saying we've got 483 new patches for the first CPU of 2022, which is scheduled for this morning. 483. There are critical and high severity flaws. The critical vulnerabilities in Oracle ESSS space, graph server and client, secure backup communication application, communications, construction and engineering, enterprise manager, financial services applications, fusion middleware, insurance applications, PeopleSoft support tools, and utility application. With high severity flaws that will be fixed in the airline data model, big data graph, communications data model, commerce, food and beverage applications, e-business suite, essentially everything. MySQL, JD Edwards, iLearning, policy automation, retail applications, REST data services, Sybil CRM, supply chain systems, and so much more. Many of these flaws can be exploited remotely and without authentication. So due to the threat posed by a successful attack, Oracle strongly recommends that customers apply critical patch updates as soon as possible. So folks, again, that's 483 patches. The patches that were released by Oracle in January, April, July, and October of last year contained more than 1,400. So here we go. January alone, 483 patches. 483. I don't know who's looking forward to it. If you use Oracle, get that stuff patched. It's no playing game. They're releasing these patches because of a successful attack, meaning they've had a customer who was compromised due to these specific flaws, and they're fixing them. So if it's out there in the wild, someone's taking advantage of it, go get it patched. SAP is also patching a critical vulnerability within its supply chain attack. This was addressed recently in the SAP NetWeaver AS ABAP and the ABAP platform, which could be abused to set up supply chain attacks, according to SAP. However, this patch was put in place in October of 2021. However, many have not updated it, or some of them have had an issue, specifically in the way the patch is actually operating. So one of the things that needs to be done is a transport request can actually be tampered with after it has passed all quality gates, and the attacker could add a payload to be executed after an import into a target system, thus opening the door to a supply chain attack. All SAP environments where there's a single transport directory is used at various staging levels are vulnerable. Organizations are advised to apply the available patches, check for manipulation of transport requests before importing into production. Very critical there. Let's talk about an insider threat situation. I was reading this story over the weekend. Happy to see Bleeping Computer finally covered it. Former DHS official charged with stealing government employees' PII. 61-year-old Charles Kumar Edwards coordinated the scheme while working in the Department of Homeland Security Office of Inspector General as an employee and acting IG between February of 2008 to December of 2013. So what was he charged with? He also worked at, by the way, at TSA and the USPS. So what was he technically charged with? So while working for the government, he downloaded a ton of databases, a ton of PII. When he left the government several years later, he opened a company called Delta Business Solutions that was located in Maryland. And then from February 2015 to 2017, he stole software from the DHS, OIG, along with sensitive government databases containing PII of DHS and USPS employees, so that his company could develop a commercially owned version of a case management system that he would later sell to government agencies. There are two other defendants who cooperated in the scheme, Murali Yamazula Venkata and Sunil Patel, who all stole copies of database files containing the PII of roughly 246,167 DHS employees and 6,723 USPS employees. The stolen PII and Microsoft keys and code were then delivered to Edwards after leaving his employment. Edwards was also given copies of documents and information that would help him develop a private, commercially owned version of a case management system that he would then offer for sale. He's pled guilty, and his sentencing is pending. So, yeah, what a story here. Let's get to some people who's joined us a little bit late here. David, good morning to you. Coffee Cup Cheers, Mr. McQuiggan. Good morning to Chris, and good morning to Mr. Dela Cruz. Thank you for being here as well. We'll move to another fascinating story. Industrial control system vendors have been targeted in an espionage campaign that's focusing on renewable energy. The campaign, which started in 2019 and is ongoing, was analyzed by William Thomas, who's a security researcher. And while the findings are limited due to the analysis relying solely on OSINT techniques, they are nevertheless interesting. And I wanted to bring this up because I find this to be extremely fascinating. The reason I do that is because what we see openly happening eventually impacts our internal systems. And as we kind of see this stuff, it becomes top of mind. So saying it and listening to it could at one point trigger something while you're sitting in a meeting and listening to something, or talking to an analyst in your SOC, or talking to your partner, MSSP, and they go, yeah, we've been seeing this activity, but we don't really get it. This might help trigger it. So using public sandbox submissions and passive DNS scan, Thomas identified tens of users apparently targeted in a phishing campaign that leveraged a basic mailbox phishing kit to harvest usernames and passwords. The phishing pages are hosted on dedicated domains as well as on compromised websites. Based on the targeted email address, the operation is aimed at the employees of organizations in various sectors, but the focus appears to be on renewable energy. It targets include employees of ICS vendors like Honeywell, Schneider Electric, Huawei, and Chinese chip maker HiSilicon. The phishing was also aimed at several universities in the U.S., including the University of Wisconsin, California State University, and Utah State University. NGO and government organizations have also been a target, including the California Air Resource Board, the Morris County Municipal Utilities Authorities, and the Taiwan Forestry Research Institute, and the Carbon Disclosure Program. There's also other victims, including a electricity supplier in Bulgaria, Romanian telecom company Telecom, and Italian plastic recycling firm Cerema. Some of the infrastructure used in this campaign was used back in 2019 to target multiple banks in Bulgaria. Attribution is difficult. However, this is looking like a Russian operation tied to Fancy Bear, which is believed to be attributed to Russian intelligence. Part of what we're seeing in the geopolitical world today, folks, with this specific story, Russia is getting ready to invade the Ukraine. At least it appears like that. They've got over 100,000 troops on the borders of the Ukraine. We are what seems to be at the moment headed towards the first conflict in Europe since the conflict between Yugoslavia and Serbia back in 99 and 2000. So this one seems to be extremely volatile. Just yesterday, the Brits sent training troops and firing essentially anti-tank missiles and weapons to the Ukrainian military to help arm them. Germany has banned the Royal Air Force plane that's carrying all that to fly over its airspace because they're thinking it's just tensing things up. So things are getting very, very interesting, and Russia has an interest in this simply because recyclable, renewable energy targets Russia specifically, simply because Russia is building the Nord Stream 2 natural gas pipeline. Anything that creates additional energy dependencies away from Russia is a target for the Russians and something they want to know all about in order to be able to maintain their superiority. And they understand that their superiority in the region for their political gain is in the energy sector. Europol took down VPNLab, which is a service that was used by ransomware gangs. An international law enforcement operation seized the servers of VPNLab.net, which typically provides its services to criminal underground cybercrime groups, including ransomware gangs. The 15 servers that were operated by VPNLab in Germany, Netherlands, Canada, the Czech Republic, France, Hungary, Latvia, Ukraine, the US, and the UK were all taken offline and seized. No arrests were announced, but the company services were rendered inoperable with a Europol sign on their website letting people know that it has been taken down. Last year, they took down the double VPN, which was another service intended for cyber criminals. And now they're trying to mitigate this one as well. So another tick, but something else will pop up tomorrow, and that's the challenge with what we do. Finally, told you we're going to talk about Russia and Kiev. We talked about it yesterday, Russia and the Ukraine. We talked about this yesterday, and in fact, last night on Clubhouse, on Tech Talks, we had an entire conversation around what is cyber warfare and what would be a cyber attack that would be an equivalent to a declaration of war. Yesterday, NATO inked a deal to bolster its cyber support for the Ukraine after the different cyber attacks that have taken place against Ukraine over the last several weeks. Ukraine said on Sunday that it had evidence that Moscow was behind the attack last week that knocked down government websites. The Kremlin has obviously denied involvement. NATO secretary said on Friday that experts from NATO and its members were already on the ground working with Ukraine to tackle the latest cyber attacks. He said the new agreement would involve enhanced cyber cooperation, including Ukrainian access to NATO malware information sharing platform. We have also successfully worked with Ukraine for several years, delivering key capabilities and knowledge exchange, according to the head of NATO's Communication and Information Agency, Ludwig de Camps. This new agreement will deepen the collaboration with the Ukraine in modernizing their IT and communication services while identifying areas where training may be required to their personnel. U.S. software giant Microsoft warned on Sunday that the cyber attack last week could prove to be destructive and affect a lot more organizations than it was initially feared. Moscow and NATO have failed to make a breakthrough in easing tensions. And as I said just moments ago, folks, the Royal Air Force of the UK has sent ammunition and training troops to the Ukraine in order to help beef up their military. A bipartisan group of U.S. senators and congressmen has traveled to Kiev and are there as we speak to show their support for the Ukraine. Things are getting tense. Russia is currently fighting this battle in the cyber battlefield. and through cyber warfare. It'll be interesting to see what this specific thing does. Keep your eyes on this, folks. This is going to be the precedent of everything going forward from an attack perspective on our organizations, on the rules of engagement, and so much more. Whatever Russia gets away with in the Ukraine, they're going to try to get away with everywhere else. Watch those TTPs, watch those IOCs, put in compensating controls to your environments based on what you're seeing, especially if you're in an industry where you could be next or you could impact something where Russia might try to throw other people off its scent coming in the next several weeks. That's it for us here, folks, with today's show. We'll be back with a lot more tomorrow. Until then, go patch your Oracle, patch your SAPs, and build a good insider threat program, because apparently DHS officials are stealing stuff and then trying to sell it back to the government. Till next time, folks, and we'll be back here again tomorrow at 9 a.m. So be here. Thank you all for being here, and stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.